17 past the hour, 4 weeks to go until the midterm elections, and Georgia Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker will hold his first campaign event since NBC News obtained text messages between Walker's wife and a woman alleging that Walker paid for her abortion in 2009 and pressured her to have a second one 2 years later. Walker will be joined by Florida Senator Rick Scott, who heads the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee, and Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. This comes one day after Ohio Senate candidates J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan held their first debate, with both candidates attacking each other over issues ranging from abortion to crime. And there was also, well, some colorful language as well.
I have been a pain in the rear end to Nancy Pelosi. And if Chuck Schumer's the leader, I will be a pain in the rear end to him, too. I'm for Ohio. I don't kiss anyone's ass like him. Ohio needs an ass kicker, not an ass kisser.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Another
well-rehearsed lines.
With us now to talk about this and some of the other tight Senate races, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa in Carrollton, Georgia, NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch in Cleveland, Ohio, and Michael Steele, former Republican National Committee chair and an MSNBC political analyst. So, Ali, what can we expect from Herschel Walker's event this afternoon?
Well, Jose, expect to see a huge show of support for Herschel Walker. This is going to be the first time we see GOP heavyweights against abortion rights rush, at least in person, to his side amid this whole abortion controversy against Walker, with NRSC Chairman Senator Rick Scott and Senator Tom Cotton stumping for him here in Carrollton, Georgia this afternoon. And what their message is going to be today, Jose, is really to send this message of it's okay to back this guy. We know he's not perfect, but he is the best and quite literally the only option that Republicans have right now in this race that could very easily come down to quite possibly control of what is now a 50-50 Senate. And they're trying to show, at least publicly, that they don't care about this whole abortion controversy, and they don't think Republican voters should either. A source close to Walker's campaign tells NBC that more Republican lawmakers tell them they're eager to stump for Walker on the campaign trail. That's something we're closely monitoring, whether this event with Scott and Rick Scott and Tom Cotton opens the door for more of them to commit publicly to coming down here to Georgia to stump for Walker in this critical race that's still considered a toss-up 4 weeks to Election Day, Jose.
And meanwhile, Jesse, Ohio Senate candidates Ryan and Vance held their first debate last night. What are the key takeaways from that event?
Yeah, so I think, Jose, this debate in many ways looked like what we were expecting. The two candidates trying to pitch themselves as the more authentic Ohioan. And that came up repeatedly throughout the debate over several issues, but both of them more hand in hand with each other on issues like China, on opioid concerns here, and on funding for police. But one of the places we saw the two diverge more is on abortion. Congressman Tim Ryan reiterated his stance that he'd like to see a return of Roe v. Wade. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance, whose campaign website explicitly says he wants to end abortion, seemed to give himself more wiggle room last night.
I've always believed in reasonable exceptions, but some minimum national standard is totally fine with me.
That last line right there is a reference to something being proposed by Senator Lindsey Graham. But Vance did not go on to talk more about what exceptions he'd be okay with. He talked about one specific case that has made headlines of a 10-year-old girl getting an abortion out of state. But he then turned that into a conversation about immigration in this country. So we wanted to follow up with Vance after the debate in the spin room. However, unlike Ryan, who did come take questions, Vance himself did not take our questions himself, instead sending a surrogate to speak on his behalf. Here's part of my exchange with him.
I'm just going back to what I was asking you about at the beginning about abortion. Is that not right now in this election?
He answered that question.
No, he didn't.
No, I believe he did.
He did not give clarity on the broad scope of when he would be okay with abortion.
I believe he gave clarity on the issue.
So what was the clarity he gave?
You have to go back and look at the tape. I'm
asking you because we don't think he gave clarity.
Well, then there'll be an opportunity for follow-up.
When?
There's going to be a debate next week.
That surrogate told me he was not prepared to share Vance's stance on this issue. I've followed up with the campaign repeatedly for an answer on this, and they have not given us one, Jose. Early voting in Ohio starts tomorrow.
And, Michael, we've been hearing from Republicans their issue, crime, the economy. Democrats very strongly on the issue of abortion. Jamie Dimon, head of the J.P. Morgan Chase, predicted a recession is likely in the next 6 to 9 months. Here's a little more of what he said about a potential recession.
Now you have to look at the range of outcomes. It can go from very mild to quite hard, and a lot will rely on what happens to this war. So I think to guess is hard. Be prepared, but the one guarantee which we've been consistent about is volatile markets. You're going to have volatile markets.
Michael, I'm just wondering how the comments like this factor in for the November 8th.
I don't think they factor in so much on November 8th at this point. I think people have already, over the course of the summer and into the fall, started to bake in how the economy is affected and what they feel. What Jamie's talking about is not projected for another 6 months, well after the election. So folks aren't going to sit there, well, there may be a recession in 8 months. How am I going to vote today? That's not how that works. It's nice narrative, and it probably will feed some of the narrative for Republicans who are slamming hard on, or at least trying to slam hard on the economy to avoid discussion about other things. But I think voters, by and large, have sort of baked that in because they're living it. They know what a gallon of gas costs right now. They know what it costs them for, grocery and other goods that they need at various stores and businesses in their community. So I think from the economic standpoint, the economic argument now should, if it's going to shift, it should be shifting by Democrats. Okay, you don't think we've done a good job. What are you going to do? What's your proposal to deal with inflation? What's your proposal? And of course, there is no proposal. So you fall back on the social issues, which again trips up Republicans, as you saw there in the debate in Ohio, where we give a broad discussion but not specifics on where we stand. And then in the larger narrative, Jose, watching Republicans jettison 50 years of their view, their position, holding the line against America on abortion, over this one man, yet again, over one man. Throw it all away because they're more interested in the power than they are the principle. And that is more telling to voters, I think, or should be, than anything else.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. I was thinking you were talking about, the whole thing of, recession, if it comes, is going to be, 6, 9 months down the road, but people are feeling it. I'm thinking of the African-American community, the Latino community in this country has already been hit hard by the economic reality. They don't have to wait for the next 6 or 9 months, Michael. I mean, we've talked about this so much. Those communities, how are they seeing how this discussion that's being carried out, for them when they're feeling it on a daily basis?
Well, I think that's a very excellent question. I think it really gives a reason why we're seeing more African-American, especially African-American women, enter the political arena, enter the race for office, so that they can have a more direct hand and say on how these policy decisions are decided. Being in the room matters, so that you can have a stake in how the solutions are developed. So when it comes to how they're going to vote, again, they will be voting along economic lines for sure, like everyone else. But then there are going to also be other concerns that brown and black communities have about their voting rights, the protection of those rights, their ability to access the ballot box. So they're seeing this from a multiple levels of political lenses, because they're so impacted, not just economically, but politically, as well as in terms of their constitutional rights. So I think for those voters, getting them motivated, getting them out to the polls is going to be a very important opportunity for Democrats.
Michael Steele, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Let's continue our conversation, buddy. Ali and Jesse, I thank you for being with us as well.